Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gwinico Podcast. My name is Sarah Pawlikowska. I'm the co-founder at Gwinico, and today my guest is Olga Murray, who is the founder at Private Goodness. How are you doing today, Olga?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. We have a lot of optimistic topics to talk about today. But just before we dive into that, can you tell us what climate optimism is and why are we talking about it?
I think, to me, climate optimism is the opposite of despair. I think a lot of people are saying that it's too late, there is no point anymore, and climate optimism is resisting that thinking. And it's a belief that we have a talent, imagination, capacity, resources to create a better world. I personally need this because if I feel like there is no point, then I'm useless. And if I believe that something is possible, then I can be way more productive and helpful to others. So it's a very important topic. I'm so glad to be discussing it with you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes sense. So can you tell us a little bit about Private Goodness, which you're the founder of? What is it?
It's a climate change and ESG consultancy. I started it 6 years ago. I don't know where 6 years went. And I work just helping companies and not-for-profit organizations get their head around about what climate change is and how they can help. And that's my main mission. Yes. One of my things is I write, every course I do is bespoke to each organization. So it's not as if I've got one course and then I try to sell 100 tickets or something. I write an individual course for each person and each organization. So it's about where they're based, what their sector is. They can tell me what their main worries are or their level of understanding. So somebody can know a lot, but want to learn a bit more. Somebody can tell me honestly their point of view now, and we address all of that. I don't do scale, I do individually, which is really great for me because I learn from each person. And because I have to write each course a couple of times a week, it means that I'm constantly researching and learning, which is exactly what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious whether there was more of an interest in that kind of consultancy. Would you say that maybe it's perhaps we're actually getting more information and maybe there's more social pressure as well to be aware of those things?
Yes, absolutely. So sometimes when people come to my courses, they don't just wake up in the morning and think, today I want to learn more about climate change, so let me come to Olga's course. What happens is sometimes that people want to win a new contract and somebody asks them, what's your policy on climate change? And they say, oh, we don't know, or they have one and they're not sure if it's good enough. So they would come to me and I would help them. So there's pressure from the supply chain, which is so important. I can see it driving education and action. Or sometimes it is that people who are more senior in their profession have children who are in school or at university who ask them at the dinner table, they say, what do you do about climate change at your work? And they don't know what to say to them. And they want to tell their kids, honestly, that this is what I do. And their kids know so much more than them. So that they also want to get to grips with what it's all about. Because we've got so much information, in a way. What I'm saying is not some kind of corporate secret. It's all out there. But what I do is I help explain this to people in a way that's relevant to them. And so the main pressures I see are from supply chain and from people's children.
That's actually very interesting. The fact that it's not only the external pressure from other businesses, but also from your own family.
Yeah.
So why would you say that it is important to stay optimistic?
Well, what else can we do? So for me personally, I don't want to guilt or shame anyone. There are some methods out there that say, well, you don't do this, you don't do that, you better get your act together. And that's a valid point of view, and it's all the different approaches are out there, work for different people. But for me, I want to build a connection with people that's optimistic and that's hopeful. I want to see how we can work together. And first, we have to be optimistic and believe that we can make a difference. And if we don't think that we can, then there's nothing else we can do. Whereas if we believe in ourselves, in our community, in our knowledge, then from that we can act. For me, I don't see how it's possible in the way I work to act without hope.
All right, but I think we can agree that it is a bit hard to be optimistic, especially with this influx of negativity.
It's so hard. So I feel pessimistic and despondent every day. It's not that I get out of bed and I'm, hurrah, let's create a better world. I turn on the news like everybody else. I see how terrible everything is with all these horrors of the world. I'm a very sensitive person. I get really upset by the things that I see and hear and by the things that people share with me. So becoming optimistic and saying, despite all of this, look at the progress we've made so far and look at what other things we can do is an effort. So I'm talking about optimism as resistance, because without this effort, you would just feel sad and you would feel like there is no point to it all because it's all becoming worse and worse. But I feel that I am in a position of privilege, so that I have this time, I have the opportunity to learn and to teach and to share and all these things that I do. I can, where lots of people are too busy struggling with the everyday effects of climate change to take this time to do what I do. So in the global north, we are responsible for 92% of emissions in excess of the planetary boundary. Countries in the global south, they haven't caused this. They're still within their fair share of the boundary, but they are suffering about 90% of economic cost of climate breakdown and 98 to 99% of climate-related deaths. So when you know this, you could say it's too late, but that would be a very privileged position. It wouldn't be using your privilege well. In fact, to say, yes, this is really bad, but we are much better in the global north, much better off than others. So we must get ourselves together and act. And about how to stay optimistic. As I say, it's very hard. So where I find inspiration in nature, like so many people, and just sometimes just like looking out of the window and looking at the trees, taking a little rest. I find inspiration in young people, in older people, and basically it's about reality. It's about stepping out away from the news, away from all this information and talking to people and breathing fresh air, I think is the one way how we resist all this negativity. Because when you do that, you can get a little bit of perspective and you can feel a bit grateful for what you have and then more powerful to act.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that it's a struggle.
What you said about not being optimistic, saying, oh yeah, this is it, this is just bad, let's just move on. That's basically being in a place of privilege. And I've never actually thought about it that way. But I think it's a very powerful message to see it that way.
In a way, saying that is similar to denial. It's saying, I am so clever that I understand the problem, but I'm not going to do anything about it because it's too late. It says you might as well not understand and not do anything about it. The fact is the same.
Where does eco-anxiety come into play with all this? It feels like eco-anxiety is this overwhelming feeling of helplessness. And often what I hear from people is that the more they learn about what's happening, the more eco-anxiety they get. So where does that come into play?
In fact, there was a survey done, Hannah Richard, she quotes it in her book, Not the End of the World, where most people that were surveyed feel that humanity is doomed and they feel that they don't have a bright future ahead of them. They feel sad, and eco-anxiety is a major factor of it. And I think with that, we should have some responsibility as environmental professionals and people in this field about the way we talk. Because if we constantly only talk doom and gloom, because what we're saying is not a lie, there are real problems. But if we just say this is bad, it has an effect. Our words are powerful. And I think we can tell people the truth about the challenges we are facing, the world is facing, and that we are going to face, and say that it is bad, and we have made amazing progress, and there is a lot to do. All of these things are true. But if you just focus on the negative alone, then you do put this burden on young shoulders, and you say the ice is melting, that the planet is on fire, and is there really a future for you? There's nothing to look forward to, but it's not true. There is a future, and we are capable of creating a better world.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure that we are very careful with our language.
So one of the things you mentioned about staying positive was nature, exposing yourself to nature. Yeah. What are other tips on staying positive?
So my son is 2 years old, and one of his first long sentences was, I see white clouds. And I thought it was so lovely. We were in the garden, and I looked up, and I thought, I haven't looked at the clouds for years. Just how you used to when you're a child, look at the clouds and think of which shapes they are and what do they look like. And it's so powerful, just like in the movie, look up, just looking up in the sky. So how else can we cope? And it's relevant to your other point about eco-anxiety as well. There is a wonderful book by Tricia Hersey, which I read recently, called Rest is Resistance. And actually, when I talk about optimism as resistance, I've taken it from there. And she says, loving ourselves and each other deepens our disruption of dominant systems. They want us unwell, fearful, exhausted, and without deep love, because we are easier to manipulate and we're distracted by what is true and real. And I want to encourage everyone I speak to in the field, and particularly young people, to take the time to rest. Yes, our problems are urgent, but if we're tired, then we won't be as effective. So we need to switch off the news, switch off some of the things, and just do whatever it is you need to rest. And then you will feel better and you will be more capable. So when we talk a lot about urgency of climate action, and it's true, we need to act, Simon Sharp says, 5 times faster. In some field areas, we need to act quite a lot faster to avoid some of the most dangerous effects of climate change. Pace is really important. And we're now in this window where it's very important to act. Having said that, say we fail and we don't get to net zero and we don't avoid some of these tipping points and climate change becomes way more dangerous by 2030, by 2040. What then? Do we then give up and we say, we had a window, we didn't do it, we tried a little bit? No, we continue protecting the planet and the people, particularly the most vulnerable people, all of our lives. If all goes terribly wrong and there's one tree standing on the whole planet, do we say there is no point, there's only one tree? No, we go and we protect that tree. We have these deadlines that we impose for ourselves for good reason. But this work is for the rest of our lives. And if it's going to be for the rest of our lives, then we need to find ways to make it sustainable within us. And just constantly talking about doom and gloom isn't going to be it. We need to do that a bit because it's true, because of scary facts, but also rest and congratulate ourselves and others on successes that we are making.
But so then congratulating ourselves on success, but how do we stay optimistic, pat ourselves on the back, but without being smug about it?
Maybe we can be a bit smug. Why not? Maybe if I do something right, why not? Maybe sometimes you do something amazing. Maybe you should feel pleased with yourself. We are very good at pitching ourselves down. That we need no help with. Just being a bit like, yeah, go us.
So we need to be more smug then.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I just want to give a couple of reasons to feel optimistic about some of the progress we made, about being smug as society. In 1 decade, solar and wind energy have gone from being the most expensive source of energy to the least expensive source of energy. So the price of electricity has declined by 89%. The price of onshore wind declined by 70%. It is now cheaper than coal. So 10 years ago, that was inconceivable. The progress that's been made is incredible. I started studying at university 18 years ago. And I was studying law, particularly human rights law. It wasn't the environment. But back then, the idea that solar would be a viable energy source and it would be cheaper than coal and that it didn't seem possible. And I was not working in the field, but I was living with a climate scientist and we're talking about all these things. That was not even on the radar. And now this is our reality. Now some of the developed countries had to burn fossil fuels to achieve the progress that we had. That's just our history. But now some of the countries can develop using clean fuel. Like they have this option now. And it's not just a better option for the planet, it's cheaper. So it's both a green choice and economical choice. That's amazing. That is a really massive progress. And from now on, it's only going to get cheaper, more available. There are issues with the solar panels. It's not all perfect. So somebody says the fossil fuels is energy from hell and renewables is energy from heaven. It's not quite there. There are issues. But the way they're being addressed is really good. I think it's a cause for celebration. Another thing is a reason for hope for me is that we are not alone. Another survey was done of 130,000 individuals from 125 countries, found that 86% of people endorse pro-climate social norms. So most people around you and most people around the world, most people in most countries agree with you and with me that climate is an issue. And they agree that we should have pro-climate norms. Again, people who are benefiting from the status quo, who want you to be desperate, want you to feel alone. They want you to feel your weak anxiety, feel everything about this changing and scary world alone. But you're not alone, and I'm not alone. All of these people, the vast majority, agree and have the same concerns. So It's hard, but if we find a way to make more connections online and offline, I think we will feel better and more productive about this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. A little mix of that eco-anxiety and a little bit of being smug about what we do right. Do you think that mixture can perhaps induce greenwashing or invite greenwashing?
Yes. There was an article in The Guardian yesterday that said just 57 companies are linked to 80% of greenhouse gas emissions since 2016. So 57 companies, 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. I don't think that this company should feel optimistic. I think this company should feel bad. So when I talk about optimism, I talk to normal people like you and me and probably most people in our following. I am people who are responsible for this much damage. If they're the ones doing the most harm, they're responsible for the majority of the effort to clean this up. And again, it's going to be with regulation, taxation, pressure from their families, from their children and parents, and I don't know, people who they care about. So therefore, they should think if they want to be optimistic about their future, they should do it. And so I think that if you have an article from like a fossil fuel company that says, oh, we're all optimistic, as no. So I should clarify that my message is not for these companies. It's for everybody else. I want to say about greenwashing. It's a lot of good effort has been done on making it tighter, so companies can't get away with saying just the nonsense that they used to say in the last decade. Now there's, in the EU in particular, there's new legislation prohibiting that, and the ASA are becoming stricter about it. And some of it is just so ridiculous, isn't it? I'm sure you can think of many examples of greenwashing. This is silly. But there is something, again, when you talk about smaller companies and individuals, if you say something is really bad, then you're cynical and then you're clever. Where if you say that something is really good, then you're probably stupid. It's because there's this kind of assumption that if you say, oh, this is really well, there's like, you probably just haven't thought about it hard enough.
That's true.
That's the way people think. So when you are optimistic and you make a positive statement, you open yourself up to criticism, because loads of people will come out and say, oh, how about this? And what about that? So we are very ready to jump down the throat of anybody who wants to say anything positive. So I'm absolutely against greenwashing, of course, because it just slows down our progress and it's annoying. But I think that we should maybe be a bit nicer to companies, not to the 57 ones, but to the others who are trying their best, to the honest ones. If they do something and there's never enough budget, as a consultant, I feel like I'm never able to give an absolutely perfect advice. There are always limitations. But I feel like we should be more encouraging of people who try, rather just as our default to be like to find flaws.
You mentioned that it is not always the optimistic way. Like, we can always be optimistic. Is it okay to not be optimistic about climate?
Yes, please. I think if you always try to be optimistic, it'll be very hard. All feelings are valid. All feelings are welcome. I encourage people to include optimism as part of their routine. So if you read something and it's very sad, or if you hear of something, or you try something and it fails, and you feel sad and despondent and desperate about it, that's a valid feeling, and stay there as long as you need to process it. But also read about things that have gone right. Think about how far you have come as a person in your development, how much more knowledgeable you are, how much more educated you are, how much more connected you are than you were before. And I think it would be wise to also acknowledge how far we've come in your life. But yes, you feel whatever you feel, just feel optimism some of the time, and that will already be great progress.
So that leads me to my two-part questions. What are some of the things that you would recommend for someone who might not feel optimistic today, but they want to do something towards a better change for climate? So what would you recommend?
Maybe not today, but in the next 2 years, 3 billion people are going to vote. This is an unprecedented time. There's a lot of elections going on in Bangladesh, in India, in the UK, in the States. Very soon, all of this potential change of power will be happening. So people have an opportunity to vote for parties that support the environment rather than try to destroy it. And you can wait until the election, but up until the election, you can also talk to your local candidates, I don't know, organizers around, and see what their views are on green policies, on climate justice, on just transition, all of that. But about what to do, we need to think, where is our power? We have power as voters, those of us who can vote. We have power in our money. Again, those of us who have pensions, for example. So you might not have any money on your bank account right now, but if you were ever employed, then you probably have some kind of pension pot. But if you don't now, you will in the future. And making your pension green is 21 times more powerful than giving up flying, going veggie, and switching energy provider altogether. So money is really important in all this. Are they pension providers spending, or banks spending money on financing fossil fuel developments, or are they spending them on renewable energy and climate adaptation? So if you move your money, you might not think, even my pension pot is not very much. If you involve an organization and you encourage them to green their pension, that can be millions of pounds. That's something you can influence. And there's an organization called Make Your Money Matter that has very easy templates for how to do that. They're great, actually. They've got fantastic videos as well. So a lot about what we can do actually in climate is what we should not do. So we can consume less, so not buy so much. So fast fashion is just out of control. People buy too much of things and then throw them away. So what can we not buy? And obviously there are essentials. I'm not suggesting we should just give up consumerism altogether, but on purchasing anything altogether. But think about it. Do I really need this? Because everything you buy has some kind of environmental impact. Consuming less meat and dairy as well is always a good idea. I, for example, don't eat any red meat ever, but other dairy, I just consume less. So, for example, I don't eat ice cream in the evening, and it's good for me, but it's also like small steps to reduce. And then I think it's important to find people who give you energy, who inspire you, to make you feel more powerful. So they say about finding your tribe. And I think it's about who helps lift you up. And then once you feel uplifted, once you feel empowered, who can you lift up? Because pulling people out of poverty is climate work. It's climate adaptation work. But it's not top down, this movement and our efforts. It's going to be about how can we bring everyone on board. It's about find people who help you and help others. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Basically, there's lots you can do and there's lots you can not do. And whenever you do or not do something that's in a positive direction, maybe just be a bit smug about it, like we said. Maybe celebrate doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So the second part of this question would be about books, because that's actually how we met as well, for some book recommendations. Yes. So what are your favorite books for climate optimism?
Oh, so many. I read a lot of books. I read about almost 100 books a year sometimes. I read books from the library offline. Again, it's about resistance, being away from the internet, being away from this kind of negativity and focusing on someone's work and someone's thoughts is so important. What can I recommend? Saving Us, Catherine Hayhoe. She talks about climate scientists' case for hope and healing in a divided world. I have somewhere here Hannah Ritchie, who wrote a book called Not the End of the World, where she talks about some of the progress we've done. And she also talks about some things that we say every day that are not quite right. And she dispels some myths. I like the book actually called Climate Optimism. Is from Zara Biabani. It's a very short book. It's 100 pages. You can read it in one sitting. And she's a young climate activist who does a great job as well. I think that's to start with. I could go on. But you can look at my Private Goodness blog as well, where I have an article about some of the best books. But yeah, there are loads out there. And thank goodness. I don't know what I would do without them.
Yeah, basically, this is a very good article. I read that as well. And I need to thank you for all those recommendations for our Guernica page. We'll definitely be checking out those books and making summaries. To kind of finish off and nicely wrap it up, I would like to ask you what your message of hope would be for the people who are not so optimistic currently about our climate situation.
I am going to quote Cristina Figueres, who actually wrote another book that I should recommend. Which you would choose? Cristina Figueres, who was a very impressive diplomat. She was behind the Paris Agreement. She said, when you're faced with hard realities, Look at them with clarity, but also know that you're incredibly lucky to be alive at a time when you can make a transformative difference to the future of all life on Earth. So climate change is not something that we win or we lose. It's about the direction of travel. Every day we choose a new future. And if we are optimistic, then like Christina, we can together create a better future. She says so, and she's very clever. And other people who have achieved great things say so, and it is possible for all of us to choose a better future. Let's do that.
Very beautiful. Olga, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It was very optimistic and informative.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you never miss an update. And if you're looking for even more exclusive content, sign up for our weekly newsletter. You can find the link in the description. Stay connected and we'll see you in the next one.